We have another update from our former Prime Minister, Liz Truss. She's been quite outspoken recently, going against the CCP in China, the rise of globalism and everything else. And this time, Joe Biden. Yes. So yesterday there was this forum conference thing with as Liz Truss would call it, the pro-growth conference and the cabal. Because obviously right now with the rise of the authoritarian, tyrannical, leftist globalists who want to control every aspect of our life, from taxation to social policies and woke nonsense. Liz Truss has been speaking out against all this, and she's been getting a lot of attacks from the establishment. Last night there was this conference thing, and she spoke against Joe Biden, his policies, specifically the Inflation Nonsense Act that's completely destroying and bankrupting parts of America. Let's go to the audio recording that we have from yesterday, what Liz Truss said about the anti-growth coalition.
And those of you in the room are brave people, because this agenda is not exactly fashionable at the moment. In fact, we might say that the Overton window has shifted to the left across the Western world. It's not just shifted to the left, I think the Overton window has been slammed shut on many of our fingers in recent years. If we look at what's happening in corporate boardrooms, where there's more chat about identity politics than there is about making a profit. If we look at what Joe Biden is doing in America with state subsidies and the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, how's that going, Joe? If we look at that, rather than making America more competitive, or the OECD, which is trying to impose minimum tax rates on the free world. And I believe might be run by an Australian, Tony. I think you might need to have a word with him. Or the fact that across the free world we've seen monetary policy which has produced cheap money, but not the economic growth that we all want to see. So what are we going to do about that here in this room? Well, I think we need to make the arguments again. That's the reality of the situation. And what we know is if we put up taxes too much, revenues go down. And we've seen that with the windfall tax in the North Sea. We've seen it with AstraZeneca deciding to locate in Ireland rather than here in the United Kingdom. We need to get control of the size of government. I think we all understand that COVID was a difficult period for us. But 47% of GDP spent by the government here in Britain, I don't think is sustainable, and I don't think it leads to high growth. We also need to get rid of huge swathes of regulation. Now, we promised people when they voted to leave the European Union that we would get rid of the EU law off our statute books. We did have another vote on it this afternoon, but that EU law is still on our statute books. It's a bit like getting divorced, but still living in the same house as your ex-husband. And what we know, and we know this from history, is that when countries pursue policies that give people freedom, that give people choice, that give them an incentive to go into work, to go into business, to open up new ventures, that is when you get the prosperity that we need. And of course we need that prosperity at the moment to deal with the issues people are facing on the cost of living. You know, it's tough. Inflation is high. But we also need that prosperity because we need to challenge those who hate our way of life. Countries like China, who want to impose their top-down totalitarian regime, their way of thinking, not just in China, but right across the world. And that is why it's so important that we pursue the agenda we're pursuing.
Now you wonder why the whole of the establishment came down very hard on Liz Truss. If only she had a bit of a chance to see if her ideas would work or not. We don't know. They might have worked, they might have not worked, but she never had the chance. And this is quite interesting because her agenda going against the main globalist consensus, for example, the minimum tax rates that Joe Biden is essentially leading. OECD is doing it, but Joe Biden went around, got the European Union involved, got Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt. Everybody's in favor of having a global minimum tax rate, which is quite damaging, obviously, but also it's the beginning of, it's a tip of the iceberg when it comes to global control over national sovereignties and self-determination. So we left the EU. I know we could still criticize the way Brexit was done, but let's just hypothetically say we now have Brexit Britain. Even if we had Brexit Britain fully independent, it doesn't really matter because they're going through the back door for us to surrender our rights as a country, as a nation, to all these internationalist ideas. So what is the point of even voting for parties or prime ministers or our local MPs when they're going to have international decisions made for us on behalf of us, and we can't really challenge it? We can't really change policy. Even if you get a new party to get involved, they're going to have to go through international discussions, international law debates, and you're going to have lawyers getting involved, the European Court of Justice saying you can't back away, you will be completely sanctioned. It's disgusting. And I don't know how long it's going to take for the tide to be turned, but again, there will be a backlash. And I'm just worried about how bad the backlash is going to be. It's best to turn things around before it gets too late. I know some people would say it's already too late, but it could get even worse. So let's see what we're going to do on this channel. Subscribe to the channel. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.